Yeah.
Man, yeah. Welcome to the Cultured Bumpkin. We've been trying to do this a while, and we're finally making it happen.
Yes, sir. Here we are.
Good deal. I love the hat. I love the cap there.
Hmm. Well, I
Mississippi.
stayed with some just cultured, distinguished people out in when the heck was that? Spring in the spring. Yeah, I came over, saw you guys, and now I suppose an adopted son of Mississippi.
That's right. That's right. Well put. Good deal. Well, good to
Yeah,
have you.
yeah. Nice
Um,
one.
I first heard of your work through, um, I guess it was Nate Boyer, maybe, but I grabbed the first book in the series about sort of the historical fiction of Rome in the first century up in Germanic areas, and I like that sort of thing. And how many books have you written in that series?
In that series, 5 1/4 because
Okay.
I'm working on the new one right now. It's like it was always my intention to kind of try and knock out one a year. I say
Okay.
knock out sounds terrible, right? One a year, but then you get certain obligations, certain opportunities, and quite often in publishing, like an opportunity will be like, um, "Hey, we've got this thing we need to use and go. Like we need to finish in like 3 months. Go."
Right.
So it's been quite hard to plan. So like this summer, I've had the idea for the final one. I've known how I've wanted to wrap up the series for years, but
Okay.
had it all outlined and everything. But it's just having that because when I'm writing as well, I don't mind. I don't necessarily need to do an entire book on back to back to back days, but I at
Okay.
least like to get the acts done in one kind of like swoop. So I was like, all right, I've got enough time now to get Act One done, rough draft. Let's get
Right.
that done, and then when I've got a break, I'll get Act Two in and Act Three in. Um, I mean, if possible, I like to just work on an ideal thing would be to just work on, just get through the whole thing at once. But um, the Roman books, they started off, we started off with Penguin. Then I wanted to do I wanted to go and do a prequel then, and they made me an offer, which is very good of them. But I thought, I want to try the self-publishing thing, so I self-published the third one, and then another publisher kind of saw the Amazon reviews and things and was like, hey, we'd be interested in buying this, and we want to turn this prequel into a series because the book 3 was a prequel. But I
Okay.
already had it in my head that I wanted to do 3 prequel ones anyway, because that's
Okay.
kind of necessary. Because in order to, just so people understand, in order to set up book 6, I needed 2 in the present and 3 in the past to bring
Okay.
everything together for the 6th book back in the present.
Okay.
So I did that. I did the trilogy with them, and now on this book 6, I'm going to do it independently again, because his last book is called Warrior, and almost a year to this day, one of my longest friends, one of my best friends, was killed in Ukraine, and
Hmm.
I thought I wanted to do something. I mean, obviously the book was already planned, but this, if you're writing for yourself and you're publishing for yourself, there really are no rules. And I thought, well, great, this will give me the beginning of the book an opportunity to kind of speak to the reader that you don't necessarily get in something if you're a bit more traditionally published, where you have to kind of, they want you to kind of adhere to certain rules, which is, fair enough. But I wanted to really kind of speak to the audience, to talk more about why I did the series in the first place, and more about Warrior, because the thing about the whole journey with this Roman soldier has been based on things that I've experienced and based on things that I've witnessed in my friends, and also what I've observed from reading about warriors in all these different wars. And I thought it's great if I publish it myself. I can, I mean, I could just have this a bit like I'm doing now, a winding introduction that might last for, I don't know, 50 pages, rather than a quick like little bit in the acknowledgement section at the back. So and it'll be nice as well to do it on my own, because one of the reasons I'm doing the book is because I want to finish it. But I've also always had like a bit of an issue with authors who start a series and then clearly give it up because they got offered better money to do something else. Now,
Hmm.
I understand that people have families and things like that. You got to put, food on the table, and I've had to push things back myself. So I totally get it. But I thought, if someone's put the time in to read 5 books, I will find the time at some point to give them that, to give that finale. Because you've asked people to give, if nothing else, a lot of their time. Hopefully more than that too. Hopefully a little bit of heart and everything. But at the very least, they've given their time. So, I always feel like it's important to bring like series and stuff full circle.
Right. Excuse me. I think that's great. That's a great way of looking at it, because I know what you mean. There's been times where it's, the first book is awesome, second book is pretty good too, and the third book, what were you doing? What is going on here? And I love that. If you
can I just say that? Sorry, bro. Can I just say this as well about a book? There is a little bit of me that is worried that people might not like the last book, because when I sat down to write it, there'd been a few years between the last one and this one. And in that few years, I think I've changed quite a lot. And I'm hoping it's going to work, because the whole idea with the character is obviously he's a different person in book 6 than he is at book 1, because he's been through this journey and he's learned things. And I knew it. Hey, Lolo. Sorry, the cat has now joined the podcast.
Okay, very nice.
That's why I left the door open, make sure he always comes in. But I just kind of, this is again something I wanted to talk about in this, kind of extended introduction, is just, look, the angry, the really angry, bitter, disillusioned person who was in book 1 was me when I wrote book 1 in 2017. And don't get me wrong, still get angry and disillusioned, but there's definitely been a bit of growth in there too. And so when I was writing it, I just thought, I thought I just can't even, well, not that I can't connect with that character, because obviously I can remember what it was like to be there, but I thought that I wouldn't be able to authentically write that character. If to do book 1 now, if I was to sit down and try and write that book now, I wouldn't be able to do it. It just wouldn't feel right.
Interesting. That's fascinating.
Can I introduce Lolo?
Oh, please.
Cheers.
Hey, Lolo. How's it going?
Anything to say? She's your moment. No? Okay.
Well, if you think of it,
she's knocking my. All right, Lola. What was your chance? Sorry, man.
That's really cool. I want to put this on the screen here. I know the first one's Blood Forest. What are the names of the other ones? I'm going to stick them on the screen.
Let me just look at the shelf. We got Blood Forest. So Blood Forest got renamed Ambush. And I would like to say that was not my choice. The publishers got to do that. So we got Blood Forest / Ambush. Second book is Siege. Then we've got Rebel, Traitor, Legion. Legion, Traitor, Rebel. And the final book is Warrior. Forgive me, it is late in the evening here.
Okay, Ambush, Blood Forest.
Ambush
to
Siege. Siege goes to Legion, which is the first prequel. Traitor, Rebel. I've run out of fingers.
Traitor and Rebel. Do you have a title for your last one, or is it still a secret?
Last one is Warrior.
Oh, that's right. Right. Okay.
Ooh.
Okay. So for people that are not familiar with Geraint's work, if you like historical fiction like I do, you would really like it. Obviously, these are battle scenes, so there's lots of profanity and violence in a very realistic way, I might add. There's nothing, I don't know. When I read, of course, Blood Forest is the first one, like I said, renamed, but I was struck with how realistic the dialogue was when people are just sitting around back at the barracks, back at the tent. I was like, man, this, obviously I've never been in a sword fight, but your description of it seems very real. But then the the veterans talking amongst themselves at moments of sort of idle. That is very realistic, and I think it's such as is common to man with regard to armies around the world. That's how dudes talk to each other in their spare time. So,
well, thanks, bro. I mean, one on the language. I know some people when they read historical fiction, they almost expect it to be like this kind of quite stuffy. I mean, it's funny, like people will always people will kind of some people will criticize you for not using this kind of very stuffy British kind of talking thing. And it's like the reality is we don't really know how Roman soldiers would have talked to each other. They didn't leave us books, they didn't leave us podcasts or anything like that. What has been passed down to us, it would be like if I took a textbook off my shelf now, and that's what people in 1,000, 2,000 years judged how we speak now. It's not going to be an accurate portrayal of how people spoke. We're reading it in a different language. What matters to me is the story and the people and emotions. And I'm a big believer that people are people. One of the issues I've not come up against, that makes it sound way more than it is. But people will say, oh, Romans wouldn't have had PTSD and issues with battle because they lived in much bloodier society. And now this is like quickly dismissed because one, I think there's like a bit misconceptions about what PTSD is anyway, right? So PTSD doesn't need to mean crying in the shower, right? PTSD could just mean that you overreact to stimulus. You get angry easy. These are all things I could definitely see Romans having.
right.
And also, if you look at studies, if you go to look at studies from somewhere like Mexico, where there's been incredible levels of violence now for decades, and you look at PTSD in children there, the rates are through the roof. Now, those kids, unfortunately, all they've ever known is the violent society. And they haven't got an immunity to it. It's quite the opposite. So I think unequivocally, there just seems to be something with people that we want to pretend that we're different in our age and that we're not people. Bro, got my Mississippi State cap on right now. If you threw gladiator fights in that stadium next week, you'd sell out in a day. If I did the same in Wrexham, I'd sell out an admittedly much smaller stadium in a days. Like the fact that people watch all this drone footage out of Ukraine of people getting blown apart. People are people. Like, I think if you could get past the language barrier, you'd have a very similar conversation. Now, you might have different cultural points, the same as you and I have slightly different religious outlooks and stuff, but most of the things that matter to you, most of the things that scare you, most of the things that get you excited are going to be the similar kind of things.
Yeah. That's I thought you just captured that really well. And if you ever read, I mentioned this to you before, but Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield, one of your mentors or whatever, who's also, Marine, U.S. Marine. So he knows all about that. The Gates of Fire was my first introduction to historical combat fiction, you might say. And I remember we were legislated to read that by my commanding officer, and I was like, oh, this is going to be stupid. We've got a freaking novel to read. And then I loved it. And it really had a lot to learn in there about, leadership and all kinds of stuff. It was great. And anyway, can
I just say something about Steve real quick?
Yeah.
Well, two things. One, he's a brilliant guy, very generous with his time and with his knowledge. Great guy. The other thing as well is, like, I should say, actually, now we've got the opportunity, there's a book that he did, I don't know if you read it, called The Afghan Campaign.
I haven't.
Oh, dude, it's so good. It's so good. It's my favorite one. And that, I read it before and after Afghanistan, and I think I read it while I was there. I know I definitely read it in Iraq, but it's that to me, because it's kind of about a squad, that was what gave me the real kind of, like, not permission, but the kind of thing of, oh, you could do this. It doesn't have to be about the general or whatever. You could do a squad book. So shout out to Steve on that one, because he's been massive inspiration, so he still is.
That's awesome. And for those that don't know, you know him on a personal level, correct?
Very lucky to. Yeah. We connected through social media when he first got on, really, I was like, this can't be the real Stephen Pressfield. Like, I was like, he's got like 10 followers or whatever it was at the time. But no, he's a really great dude.
Good deal. That's great. I just finished his The War of Art,
Brilliant.
this spring, I think, and that was
Mm-hmm.
really good. And I really like how it was. I mean, you can learn something from anybody, but a lot of real great artists are not particularly rugged.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen Pressfield's clearly both, and I really like that. I think there's something to be said about an artistic person that's not all they're good for. If bombs started to drop, it wouldn't be like, oh, you know, I'm helpless. You could help with whatever
Yeah.
needed to be helped.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And okay, so I had a question about your writing process. Obviously, you're a prolific writer. Do you ever? So I guess it's twofold. Do you ever write just for fun, like an artist would sketch? So you just write a description of where you're at or a person that will never be published, or maybe you'll stick it in a book or something, but that particular piece by itself is not the end piece. So that's one. Do you ever sort of sketch with your words? And then two, are you disciplined about it, or do you have to? Well, I'm in the mood, so I'm gonna sequester myself. I need tea. I need coffee. I need to, whatever that is. What's your process?
So the first part is usually no, because I do find that you've got a capacity every day in how much you can write, and I usually have too much on the plate to be then able to write for fun, and that can be annoying because quite often, like coming out to you guys in spring, that was part of a really great trip from one coast to America to another. I would really love to be able to just spend 2 weeks just for the hell of it, writing about that trip because, and then maybe one day it gets used, like you say, or maybe it's just something I get to have fun writing because I do write a lot about war, but I really enjoy just writing more light-hearted stuff too. Like, Nate and I have worked on comedies together and things. And I would enjoy that, but I just find that I've only got a few hours of good writing in me in the day, right? And don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that you work a few hours a day because there's editing, there's research, there's everything like that, which kind of leads us into part two. I don't want to use the term skin a cat while my cat is around, but she's left. So there are many ways to skin a cat, and it will definitely depend on the book. But at first, when I first started writing, I definitely felt that there was I should say as well, because maybe this is kind of pertinent to the doodling kind of aspect of writing. I did journal when I was in Afghanistan, but other than that, I didn't really do any writing from I mean, obviously did it for university, the bare minimum to get my grades, that kind of thing. But aside from that, I didn't really do any writing except the journal until I was maybe 29, something like that.
Okay.
So it's never been like a part of my daily life. I have because certain podcasts would be like, you should journal every day, and I tried it, didn't work for me.
Okay.
So my writing, generally when I'm writing, it's professionally. And I'd say on that, it's whatever works for people, but for me, I've usually got enough on the plate. I just don't feel like that hour or whatever of writing. Now, maybe it would be different if, let's say I wanted to write some light-hearted notes about a trip I took and the book, or I was working on a comedy at the time. Those two things might complement each other. But I would find it very hard to switch from I had a great time in Mississippi to, and now this battalion goes over the top and half of the guys get wiped out in an hour. Those are two very different mindsets. And I just don't think I've tried it. It doesn't work for me personally. But yeah, so when it comes to the books, everyone is different, but the consistencies are, and again, this is only speaking from my own experience. I think discipline is everything with it. When I'm fully immersed in a book, I spend most of my day while I'm awake in the office, either writing, editing, researching, and try and get the gym in and try and get a walk in and eat. And aside from that, it will pretty much be that until I fall asleep. And then I usually wake up when I'm deep in a book. I find it difficult to sleep for more than 4 hours at a time. So I'll usually wake up about 4 in the morning. I'll get up, I'll come and write for a few hours. I'll go back to bed about 9, 10, sleep for a few more hours, get up, and then work through the afternoon. I feel like for me, it just, the best thing that works for me is to go straight from my bed via cup of tea, clean your teeth, maybe, to the desk and get straight into it. And if I get started that way, I know I'm going to have a good day's writing. If I try and come to it in the afternoon or anything like that, I've kind of got to the point now where I'm like, look, if I can't get that schedule going in the morning, what can I move from later in the week into this afternoon and just get what I can done this day now and just find that space elsewhere in the week? Because I already know now if I don't get straight into it in the morning, then the writing won't be of a standard that I'll be happy with. Now, I can, if I've got things that I can't move, if I've got some meetings that have to be in the morning or whatever, I can still work on the book in the other hours. But I find that my best writing is from waking up and within 15 minutes I'm at the desk and writing.
Interesting. Okay. So it's like that's your creative energy is highest in the morning. Then you can work into more research and editing type stuff, which is less creative later in the day.
I think creative energy is part of it. I think when you're sleeping, your brain's kind of filing a lot of things out, sorting things, answering questions for you.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest part is just that your focus is 100%. You haven't been pulled in any other thing, whether it's just, your focus could be pulled away in an eyesight. You could have a lovely conversation with a friend for an hour in the morning, but that's pulled your focus away from what you're working on. And I want my focus to be 100%, on that. So like that's another part of it as well, is just keeping that phone in another room until the work's done. Because again, it's just anything to do with focus. Like I've tried again, getting up in the morning, going for a walk before starting it. Well, that doesn't really work for me because when I'm on that walk for an hour, I'm thinking about other things, so it's, for me, it's just get to the desk, get going.
Interesting. So from the time you open your eyes to the time you're sitting at your desk, have you looked at your phone yet? Have you checked emails for anything? Or is that?
To be blunt, I've had a piss and made a cup of tea. And that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Probably not clean my teeth, quite honestly. Like, I'm getting there as soon as I can. I should cover my teeth. I don't want to play into the British stereotype of teeth, but here we are. So, and then when I'm working on a book as well, like that will probably be that will be in the office probably 14 hours a day, 7 days a week for a couple of weeks. Then I might feel like I need a couple of days to kind of just get on the mountain or whatever like that. But usually I'm writing this in my main kind of like heavy writing period is usually like October to February. So like it's very short days of light anyway. Weather's not exactly great. So it's, it's very easy to kind of just bunker down and, and do it. And I'm lucky, dude. I don't have, well, I say lucky. I mean, it depends how you look like. I don't have kids or responsibilities like that. So I'm able to, obviously, if I had responsibility of getting kids to school in the morning and that kind of thing, I'd have to adapt and find a different way of doing it. But this is the way I'm able to do it. And I work a lot better when I have that, when I have the pressure of deadlines, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of like the hardcore phase of the year, but the whole year is like that. Like, so in the summer, things are a lot more kind of free and easy now. In the summer, I'm working more on like, like what projects can I pull out and give a bit of a polish to, what can I do over 3 or 4 days and make sure that I've got time to spend a bit of family time or, go and watch a football game or something like, trying to, it's the pace is a lot lighter. So I'm getting, a normal work week done, but I can be a lot more flexible about it. It's a lot more, my summers, I find it a lot more of the kind of admin-y side. And, like the other week, like I said, I had a couple of very clear weeks. So it's like, all right, great. Well, these 2 weeks, let's just get on it and let's get this new book started. And the difference with the fiction as well is, you know, there's not really much of a research element involved, you know, whereas like doing these World War II books, you know, you draw in from, you know, more than 100 resource books, memoirs, plus all the interviews and stuff. So there's a lot of pieces that are going into that one book, whereas the fiction work, it's usually just it's already been outlined, that's already done. So like by the time I sit down and write that, I've got the skeleton, just put the flesh on it.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So that brings me to another question. So this was your well, there we go. That is a beautiful cover, by the way. It's very eye-catching, very like there's a soberness to it, but I don't know. I love it. I love that cover.
Well, credit to the team at Pan Macmillan for that one, because they put that together. And I think they did a great job. I totally agree.
That's fantastic. So I just started this last night, but what is this about?
Well, first of all, let's blame your brother Jesse for keeping that to himself for a couple of weeks. What is it about? So in the UK, I'm sure it's the same with America. There's always armies that are referred to as forgotten armies in forgotten wars.
Yeah.
And the forgotten army, as we refer to it in Britain, is the army that fought in the Far East against the Japanese, you know, in Burma predominantly. And that's very true. They definitely were really overlooked for a long time. But I think there's another forgotten army, which was, and then there's also the case to be made for the guys who fought up through Italy. But I do think there's a case to be made that the army that landed in Normandy, which is like the British Second Army, they went from Normandy through France, the Low Countries, then into Germany itself. And I kind of thinking, because I kind of came across it because I'd be listening to these interviews that were done with Second World War veterans. And let's say an interview was 4 hours long. 3 hours would be done on Normandy. And then they'd be like, what happened in the rest of the war? And you're thinking like, there's like another 8 months of this war. Like, was it really that much of a pushover? And then when you look at it, when you start looking into it, you realize that it wasn't. Like, there was, at the end of the war, there was and like we're talking the last couple of weeks, there was a rapid advance from the Rhine across Germany. But that had only come about because there was a campaign lasting longer than a lot longer than a month, which took about 30 days to cover 30 miles. And I'm looking at, you know, like, you know, Normandy's a similar kind of thing. You know, they got off the beaches, and then once they get in the hedgerows and they're stuck at Caen, you know, you're measuring measuring days advances in meters a lot of the time. And this kind of break-in battle to Germany was the same. It was fought in February in appalling conditions. You know, every kind of winter condition you could think of. It was fought in forests. It was fought in flooded areas, which had been deliberately flooded, which would be muddy anyway. Casualties were high, and I wouldn't say the casualties were as high as the Normandy campaign completely, but you did have instances where battalions, you know, so there's some battles that most British people, myself included, had never heard of, where to take these small German, like, you know, we call them towns, but, you know, they're really kind of large villages. You know, to take that in one day of battle, you're losing the same rate of casualties as the guys who landed in the first wave on the beaches of Normandy. I'm like, how the heck do we not know more about these? So it started as it was more of an interest thing to be going on with. And then I just kind of got fascinated by this period. When I did the book about D-Day, I was trying to cover American voices, British voices, French voices, German voices. And I realized with this one, I thought I need to just go kind of like in on one group. So I went in on the British Army specifically, not the Air Force or anything. And you know, that's never to say that because it was only the British Army involved, but I just thought, you know, I didn't think that there was anything else out there similar. And I just wanted to be able to follow more of the same people, you know, throughout the campaign and give them more quote unquote airtime in the book, because the book is based on, it's more than 150 contributors who've given interviews to the Imperial War Museum, plus about 50 war memoirs as well. So it's following about 200 soldiers in different units, some of them in the same units, but generally different units through these different stages of the campaign in Germany. I'll give you one example, which I find fascinating. So are you familiar with the story of Pegasus Bridge on D-Day?
Somewhat.
Okay, so for anyone who's not, essentially the first kind of guys to land on D-Day, like in the early hours of the morning, was this small glider-borne force who landed to seize a key bridge on the eastern edge of the Normandy kind of battlefield. So
and what made Pegasus Bridge key? Like, why risk your life for a little bridge?
So it was an important bridge because this Caen Canal essentially was the what would you call it, the easternmost kind of flank of the bridgeheads. So if you held that bridge, you could look at breaking out to get around Caen, or if the Germans held it, you could threaten the beaches because you'd have access across this canal, which formed something of a defense, you know, again, down from Ouistreham down towards Caen. So it was very important to hold this. So this really small force, D Company from the 2nd Battalion, Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire Light Infantry, led by Major John Howard. He's kind of almost like our Richard Winters in the UK, right? This like brilliant leader who just, you know, just different kind of personalities, but, you know, heroes and legends of, you know, the kind of military lore. So he led this force. They seized the bridge, and then they were reinforced by the paratroopers. They were reinforced by commandos. It was a really long battle. And that Pegasus Bridge, every 80th anniversary, it's not every 80th anniversary. Sorry, man, I need to go for coffee. Every D-Day anniversary, there's always something that's going on there. There's a museum there. Tourists go there all the time. You know, it's very well known. A lot of British people will have heard of Pegasus Bridge. But what a lot of people haven't heard of is the Rhine crossing, which happened in at the end of March the following year in 1945. And this D Company and the whole battalion were involved in crossing the Rhine, and these gliders were just shot out of the sky. And loads of these guys, I said loads, I don't know the specific number, but a lot of guys who were involved in this mission to seize the bridge on D-Day, you know, which is, it's in The Longest Day. It's in, you know, a lot of these movies about Normandy. A lot of these guys were killed on this Rhine crossing mission. The battalion lost something like half of its strength in a single morning. And I just thought, like, how is it there's no big celebration about this? Because I went out to the battlefields on the anniversaries, and I'm not going to say there was nothing. I'm sure there was some people around, but when I went to Normandy for the 80th, you know, I went with your brother.
Right.
We couldn't move. You couldn't get anywhere. It was shoulder to shoulder, which was fantastic. And then I went out to these battlefields in Germany on the similar 80th events a few years later, and you're pretty much standing on a battlefield on your own. And I just thought, you know, it's, I get it. People can't go to everything. You know, people don't know about everything. But it was incredibly sad for me to see these places and just think, like, oh my God, like, we haven't forgotten about the Second World War, but we certainly have forgotten about certain parts of it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Oh no, just one more point, bro. I'm sorry. More things. I haven't really talked about this book since it came out. So something else has just come to mind. So one of the things that really blew my mind was a lot of these units that landed in Normandy were the same ones that were fighting these break-in battles into Germany and through Germany. But the people were different, because by the time people had gone through Normandy and gone through Belgium and Holland and got to Germany, you were looking at, and it's by the end of the war, that company that landed in Normandy, not necessarily on D-Day, might have been D+7, you know, they might come in like a week later. But those units that arrived in Normandy at the end of the war, so in May, so you'll have to do the maths on that. I'm not, but like, so like 11 months later, when the units and the guys in the units were on parade, and their CO said to them, like, okay, you know, the CO would address the battalion and say, right, speak to the battalion, and then he'd say, if you landed with us in Normandy, remain on parade, everyone else fall out. And there was a story about one CO looking at his battalion, and he burst into tears and ran off when he saw how few were left. And this was the story in most of the infantry battalions. You'd have maybe 25% left. And of those guys, a lot of them had already been wounded, because if you got wounded, you went to get patched up and you came back. So to have 75% down means that they're either killed or seriously wounded.
Right.
Or maybe wounded in the later stages lightly and they haven't made it back. And that was common throughout infantry tank units. And, you know, there's really tragic stories about guys who'd fought in North Africa in, you know, the early 40s. They'd then fought in Italy in 43. They'd landed at Normandy in 44. They'd fought all the way through the end of the war. And then they were killed a couple of weeks before the end of the war in Germany. And some of them were even killed after the peace, because the peacekeeping then was very dangerous. You had, I think something like 3 million displaced people, you know, because Germany had brought in all this slave labor and they wanted to rape and pillage, and not every single one of them, but there was a large number who wanted revenge. The British soldiers in their sector, same as the Americans in theirs, became this de facto police force. And some of them were killed in these things. Some of them were killed by someone getting careless, because, you know, a lot of these units by this point are made up of 18-year-old guys who have had the bare minimum few months training. Off you go. So you've got these old sweats being killed by a young lad who's mistakenly pulled the trigger on his rifle when he thought it's clear, that kind of thing. It's difficult, you know, bro. And then obviously the other big one is, you know, you've got these guys coming across the concentration camps, prisoner of war camps, then, you know, trying to occupy and police cities that have been absolutely flattened by rubble, and dealing with refugees. So the first draft of the book was 250,000 words or something, because I tried to include a bit of the piece. Yeah, so the book you're holding now is 150,000. I had to cut out a lot because it was too much.
That's half of what you.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome. I really like stuff like that, where it's something I have no clue about and yet is very adjacent to something I'm very familiar with. I always find that fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to getting into this book. Last night I did read that what you were mentioning about the CO sort of burst into tears on seeing like there's nobody left of the original group that landed at Normandy, and that had to have been very moving for all present.
Yeah, and the guy who told that story, he was, I think, 19 years old, and he was one of the old sweats in the company, because he landed in Normandy. He'd be wounded, I think, but he was an old sweat, 19 years old.
Wow, that's amazing. So you've got Voices of Victory. That's available where? I mean, Amazon, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't think that didn't get a US release, so you'd have to order it from Amazon UK, or if you want a signed copy, GeraintJonesMedia.com. Although I sell the copies at cost price. Yeah, well, here you go. I sell the copies at cost price because I believe the stories are important. I want them to get to everyone. Unfortunately, I have no control over the shipping costs to the rest of the world, which these days are absolutely ridiculous. Honestly, I sometimes think it'd be cheaper for me to just get like a couple of $100 and just book a flight and hand deliver them, because they're
sell them on the street.
Yeah, dude. No, shipping's no joke. But yeah, I just, I really believe with these, because as much as possible of these books is in the people's own words, and I'm just pulling the stories into shape and kind of trying to keep the reader abreast of what's going on. But because there's so few interviews done with these guys in this period of the war, there was almost seemed to be this attitude of, all right, whatever the war's, we know we're going to win, so who cares, kind of thing. There were parts that I had to fill in from textbooks and kind of fill in the gaps, which is nuts, because not any battle, but a lot of Normandy you can find firsthand accounts. But a lot of these battles in Germany, because you're like, oh, that sounds like a vicious one. You try and find some accounts of it, and there's just nothing. Actually, I'm sorry, bro, I'm going off on one again. So Blood Forest / Ambush was set in the Teutoburger Forest in Germany. That's where the 3 Roman legions went in and never came out. The Mons regiment, the Monmouthshire regiment, actually fought a battle there in this advance in Germany, and they too were decimated. They were so badly mauled at the end of it that they were no longer fit for, the battalion was no longer fit for frontline duty. It was the last battle that they took part in, and there was a Victoria Cross winner there, Ted Chapman, VC.
Wow, what were the circumstances of that, of sort of being in such a bad situation?
So there was a German NCO school quite nearby, and they took up the high ground in this wooded area that the Monmouthshires were sent into. So they were attacking uphill against seasoned, well-trained German soldiers, in obviously dedicated, and in that kind of environment, they got picked apart. I don't think they because one of the things that the Allies really kind of relied on was firepower, artillery, air support. They didn't have any of it to begin with, so it was. And I went there myself to get a look at the place, and like a lot of the accounts, they say wooded area, but you've got to think it was almost like it's so densely packed there. It was almost like jungle kind of fighting, and these guys knew exactly what they were doing. So they picked off the officers, they picked off the radio operators, and it was a bit of a bloodbath.
Interesting. Wow. Now, is that covered in this one?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is. No, I was reading that. Yeah, very cool. So what all, not what all, but what are some examples of battlefields that you have been to personally?
Well, the thing about living in the UK is like, I've got every day I go for a walk, I walk past bomb craters left by the Germans. So while not technically a battlefield, it's like when I go to London, you can see shrapnel on the walls. Oh yeah, and I should have mentioned this one first. Half of this house was blown down by a German bomb, so I kind of live in one, really.
So were there targets there, or is this like, well, we've overflown the target, we got to go home, and they just drop the bombs over the woods, kind of a thing?
Sorry, bro, you broke up a bit there, mate.
Are there targets, like military targets up there, or was it just sort of they're dropping their bombs to turn around?
So yes and no. So they used to build decoy airfields, and there was a decoy airfield like stone's throw up the hill here. So there's that, but there's also over that direction is Liverpool, which was really, we were an empire, and a lot of what we relied on came from America, came from other parts of the empire, and a lot of it went into Liverpool. So those docks were a massive target during the Blitz, which is when the Germans really, kind of let Britain have it with bombing. And well, I've heard a few different things. One of them is that a German plane dropped prematurely, and it set the heather and stuff on fire on the mountain. So following planes, it looked like, because as the crow flies, or as the Heineken bomber flies, it's not that far from here, from Liverpool, So if you're navigating by map at night and you saw the lights there, I could totally see that someone goes, "Oh, that must be the docks," So I'm not sure exactly what the circumstances were, but I know, on the local war memorials where we have all our names of our fallen from the war, there's also a family of people's names on the one just down the road, because I know a house got hit by a bomb. So whether or not they were going for the decoy airfield, or they mistakenly thought it was London, I don't know. But you just find them, like when I go for a walk on the mountain here. I say mountain as well; it's quite a flat top one. You just they're kind of everywhere. And yeah, the same. Like I said, when you go down to London, you can quite often tell if one building, like some of the buildings, you can tell you like that wasn't an original one. It just doesn't fit the same style as the ones around it. And there's these great resources. I wish I could remember the name of them. But if you like Google Blitz on London map, there's these great resources that will show you where everywhere in London that was bombed. And you can just look and go, oh yeah, bomb hit here on such and such day. The Battle of Shrewsbury, that's quite close. My dad's house is built on a site of an old Roman fort, you know, and stuff. So there's, because we're on the edge of Wales here, so this has always quite been a kind of hotly contested area with the Romans. Like we got Chester just down the road, which was, you know, that's changed hands with Vikings, Saxons. It was a Roman fort, you know, so we got all that stuff around here. Now, in terms of World War II, obviously done Normandy a couple of times. And then I did I did a few trips to these areas that we looked at in the Voices of Victory, and including kind of starting where the campaign began and ending up in Berlin. Now, the British Army itself, as a main fighting force, didn't go all the way to Berlin. Certain units went there, but obviously the fall of Berlin, that was down to the Soviet Union. But yeah, I went to most of these towns, you know, like and it's so different to France, bro. Like in France, you know, you've got memorials everywhere, you've got museums everywhere, and there's nothing like that in Germany. And I've spoken to people about it who know this stuff better than me, and they've told me it's not really down to like Germany being against it, but it's more of like, let's say you wanted to put a memorial for your division. Like there was a battle at Yorkshire Bridge, which is this tiny little bridge in a place called Schadenhof. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, outside of a town called Wies, or Weser. Sorry, no, Wies, I think it's called. I'm sorry, I'm not German speaking, but you know, we found this bridge, and you know, hundreds of people became casualties around this bridge. Really fierce battle. And you'd expect to find a plaque or a monument or something, and there's nothing. And I spoke to this historian for that regiment, and they said that the townspeople are very happy for something to go there, but the British Association was worried that it would become vandalized and that kind of thing, which is obviously a bit of a problem when you've got some people in that country who, you know, aren't happy with how things turned out. Even the stone that marks the point where the surrender was signed to Montgomery with the German troops, the stone is like 300-400 yards from where it originally was. It's a stone about the size of my desk with a plaque on it. There's a few notice boards, and there was a few bags of rubbish dropped by the side of it, you know, trash. It's a bit surreal, really, because it's such a moment. You know, that was like, after everything Britain had been through to that point, you'd think, oh, it's going to be a cafe here, museum here, visitor center, stone with a plaque. You know, it's a bit weird. Yeah. But yeah, I went to them, and most recently, again with Bro, I went to the Somme, which was an experience. You know, as opposed to like Normandy and Germany and Holland, where you've got these vast battlefields. You know, you could probably walk from one end to the other, a 4-month campaign. Well, just over 4 months, 4.5 months. You could walk from one end to the other in a couple of hours. You know, it's
wow.
It's you know, you'll never be able to really put yourself in the position of people who are in any of these battles. You know, because how could you? You know, even with the best imagination possible. But the Somme was just a different level again, to just try and picture what that was like, because, you know, but that's what we're trying to do for the next book. So, you know, again, you know, how can you picture these things? You can't. So go to the people who were there and let them tell us.
Right. Man. That's awesome. I really like Americans don't really teach history of any kind anymore. It doesn't seem like, I mean, even our own, like nobody knows history of anything, let alone of another country. But I find British history, you know, the UK history, whatever, very, it's fascinating. I don't think
we're so intertwined too, right?
What's that?
We're so intertwined.
It
Yeah.
is. You can't. You don't understand your own country without understanding, the monarchy or the countries, the conflicts, like you're talking about. Who's the guy? Llewellyn. What was his name? Um,
Llewellyn?
is that how you say it? Like I'm
Are
a
you talking
reader.
about which one, mate? We got a few. I'm
Well,
assuming you're not.
this one. Okay, so this is a good, like a little quick history
Oh
that
yeah.
I like. This sort of, um, I want to say he was like 1200s or something.
I mean, let me just check this because I don't want to get it wrong.
Uh,
I think I know what
anyway,
you're talking about, but I
because I'm
gotta
not even
double
sure
check.
I'm pronouncing it right, but I know there's a lot of, like you said, strife between the English and the Welsh. But that kind of stuff is.
Are you thinking Llewellyn ap Griffith?
I think so. Yes, Griffith was the last name. Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna be 100% honest and say I know nothing about him.
Okay.
So I'm sorry.
Anyway,
All right,
um,
where have you gone now?
the
Here we go.
I like learning about other I don't know, cultures and battles and things that directly influence me and the country I live in now.
Mm,
Not all the battles of, let's say, the Far East. I don't. Some of those don't
mm,
affect me. I don't think, but a lot of the wars for independence between the English and the Scottish or the Welsh or the Irish, that's much closer to home.
mm.
So anyway, so next projects. What's in the works for you?
So I got the song. Well, I'll just talk about the song book. I do have another one, but it's kind of on the wraps at the moment.
Okay.
So obviously, well, we got the Roman book 6, Warrior, and then yeah, I want to do similar to what we did with D-Day, the Unheard Tapes, and Voices of Victory, and do a book about the song. There's some fantastic books about the song, you know, and I mean, dude, in terms of like the First World War, the memoirs that came out of it, the poetry that came out of it, just the literature in general, you're not going to write better than that. And it's not about trying to because you would fail. But it's what I want to try and do is bring together a lot of the lesser known memoirs, a lot of the lesser known voices, and tell the Battle of the Somme from the trench point of view. Not this. A lot of books are done for very good reason from the top down view, and
Right.
then they will fill in every now and then with a quote from someone who's in the trenches. I want to take the opposite approach, and I want the experiences to be the most important thing, and then I will fill in enough to keep people abreast of what's going on in the larger battle. So it's just kind of flipping like what's usually done with the books. And I always think like when it comes to stories and things, and I'm not knocking other books here, I would not be able to do what I do without all the authors who have written these top down view books. I need that to do what I do, and I'm very grateful to them. But I think like when I remember stories told to me by veterans or books that I've read, like I can remember bits from Vietnam books that I read growing up. I could not tell you what unit the guy was in, where in Vietnam it was, what year it happened, but I can remember the bit of that story about what happened to his friend and how he felt about it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, to me, that is what's most important: is what were those human experiences. So that's what we're trying to do, with the songbook. And if someone comes away with a better, like, what I'm hoping is people read it and go, right, where's that bibliography? Let me find every book that's on here. Let me start reading each one of these fully. Let me look at these reference books. Let me read those fully. I'm hoping that would be the case, But at the very least, I just want people to take away some of these human experiences from the song. So it ties back to what we were talking about earlier. You can look at that and go, oh yeah, it's 110 years ago, what effect does it have on me now? And it's like, well, because those people were exactly like you.
Yeah.
Um, like, okay, again, there's some slight differences. Maybe they're a bit more patriotic than people are now, and that kind of thing. But when you boil it down, they are you, And also the Somme, has had a massive, profound effect on Britain. You know, one of the reasons that we were, you know, kind of later than some people wanted in getting into war with Germany for a second time was
Right.
because of what happened at the Somme. You
Right.
know,
Right.
there's something like there's only something like 7 villages in Britain that didn't lose anyone in both the world wars, and like only something like 30 that maybe didn't lose them from the first. Something crazy like that, bro. Like this literally was something that affected every single community, and because those, you know, like a lot of the army would be funneled into that one area where the big push was going on. You know, what was happening in that 15-mile zone was affecting pretty much every household in the country. And that changed the way, because you got to remember, dude, we were the fucking British, sorry for swearing, we were the British Empire. You
Right.
know, generally speaking, we win. You
Yes.
know, and there was a lot of patriotism. There was a lot of um this idea of you go out and everyone does their bit for king and country and stuff, and then people started asking at that point, like, "Oh, God, did we just throw," like, because you got to remember, like that, a lot of that army that went over the top at the Somme on the first day, not all of it, but a lot of it, that was the volunteer army of like late 1914 and 15, the guys who answered the call. You know, these
Right.
weren't conscripts, generally speaking. These were all volunteers, all, you know, and the army had high standards for recruiting at the time. So these are generally your fittest, you know, a lot of very educated, bright people in there, a lot of hardworking people, people from all over Britain and the Empire, who had just, you know, had gone to this place and all died in this small little area of France, which is a totally beautiful. It's hard as well, dude. It's such a beautiful area. Now you go there, you look at it, and you just, if someone told you a murder had taken place there, you go, "Oh, here? Nah, this place
Yeah.
is idyllic." And then to think that literally mass murder went on there is hard to wrap your head around. But
Wow.
yeah, no, it's just it changed Britain, and obviously by changing Britain at that point, you change the world, because Britain at that point, you know, was still one of the you know, one of the dominant powers in the world. So, you know, that battle really did shape the entire world.
Right. Interesting. Interesting. Have you ever seen the movie Chariots of Fire?
Probably have, but I don't really recall it.
So I was track, ran track in high school and stuff, and then to college. So I love that movie. And of course, it's set around the 1924 Olympics and the British Olympic team and some of the guys on it. But there's a scene in there where they first show up to university, and the headmaster gives a speech at the freshman's dinner, like as he's sort
Mhm,
of bringing it to order, and he mentions not the Somme particularly, but he said, See along the wall, these are all the names of the guys that were sitting in your spot,
mhm, mhm,
a couple of classes ago, and that they're strangers to you, but we cannot read them without them summoning faces that were dear to us. I mean, it was a beautiful speech.
mhm.
And anyway, um,
No.
it was a great scene that reminded me of it.
Mhm,
But yeah, I didn't think about it like that with the song, but that's exactly the kind of stuff that I like to dig into.
mhm.
Well, yeah, I guess it does affect me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
I do. Like, I just, you know, I'm still kind of in my infancy of reading this, and this is just stuff that, you know, again, I'm not coming up with anything here. I'm just over on the shelf there now. I've got about 110 memoirs from people, and this is just
mm,
kind of reading their stuff and going, oh yeah, I'm, you know, thought about it like that. Like I said, dude, we've been left the words of people of the people who were there. Why not? You know, why not use them?
right,
You know, we don't have to hypothesize about this stuff. They told us, you know, and a lot of these memoirs were written. Some of them were even written during the war. I've got books there written by people when they were on convalescence, who were, you know, later killed and stuff. So that, you know, their work survived the war. They didn't. There's diaries of people who, you know, there's some really tragic diaries of these guys, um, you know, keeping diaries all through their training, you know, their reasons for joining up. They talk about these, because these units, you know, you'd get these local units, what they call these PALS battalions, So, you know, your town could join up together, and not, you know, all 1,000 of you from your town would be serving together. You know, so you could have the you know, the Starkville pals and all your friends from Starkville and all these young men, your cousins, your brothers, you know, your maybe your dad is in there, and you're all going together, and you're going out to France together, and they're doing you know, they might have held some trenches here, they might have lost a couple of guys here and there, but then they go over the top, and then that unit is decimated by 50, 60, 70% in an hour. And there's so many stories about guys going out to try and recover the bodies of their brothers, you know, their friends. And then, you know, these letters are coming back home, these telegrams, and people are watching the postman come and delivering telegrams to the different houses and things. So it's unprecedented, and hopefully will never be seen again. But yeah, man, so just a waste, man.
Yeah.
The waste of it. But these guys, dude, they were optimistic, you know, like the first day of the Somme, 120,000-ish British soldiers went over the top on the first day of the Somme. And within a few hours, over half of them were casualties. And, you know, it's these guys are writing in their diaries stuff like, oh, yeah, it's the big push today. Weather's great. Can't wait to get this over with and win the war and get home, kind of thing. And then, you know, they're reading that within an hour, that guy's dead. You know, and someone happened to recover. Like maybe he was, because of the, I think by the end of the battle, I might have the figures wrong here, but it was some 400 and something thousand total British casualties over the 4.5 months of the thing. I think something like 150,000 dead, and of those, about 70,000 have no known grave. So, you know, the chances of well, I mean, a lot of, if you died in these attacks, a lot of the time your body's just in the open, where there's all this shelling, your body's pulverized. You know, if you might get a hastily dug grave, but there's no way for people to mark it, or your friend Bill knew and Bill gets killed 10 minutes later. You know, there's a really great book about this called The Unknown Warrior by John Nichol, who he writes about this problem, because in the past it was, you know, you'd have your big battle and everyone's kind of lying where they fell, and then you come and clean up, and you know, and not that was very done, you know, like the people that died at Waterloo, they were dug up and used as fertilizer and stuff, which is an insane story. I don't know if you know about that. Like the dead at Waterloo, first they were looted, and then people came and dug them up to use their bones to create fertilizer. So that's what happened to the dead at Waterloo. But so this John Nichol wrote this really interesting book about how because these British families wanted somewhere to grieve, and I can't even get my head over how terrible this must have been, but they had volunteers go back to France to dig over these battlefields and recover the dead so that they could be buried in these cemeteries. And like, you know, some of these bodies had been there for weeks. Some of them had been there for years. And they tried to identify these men as they could. But when you go to these cemeteries, a lot of them will just say unknown soldier. So they created the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Westminster Abbey, which is usually where royals get buried, you know, incredibly high dignitaries, that kind of thing. So they put the unknown soldier in there. And this book describes the whole process that took. And then obviously America did the same, Australia did the same, you know, New Zealand, everyone kind of took it from there. But the story behind it is really tragic and fascinating. I definitely recommend that book.
And that was what again? The Unknown Soldier by John Nichol?
The Unknown Warrior.
The
Unknown Warrior, because it specifically chose warrior because of soldiers. It covers soldiers, sailors, and airmen.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. That I don't know if we've talked about this. Have you seen this book before? Anatomy of Courage.
I've heard of it. I've never read it.
Okay. It was just a medical doctor, British medical doctor, in World War I, and sort of his case studies on courage and PTSD and all kind of stuff. My brother, who's in, special operations, I sent it to him, and he gave it to his psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist was like, "That is a masterpiece." He had never read it, But he said
Well,
that,
I'm mad
that
that
is
it's right. I
sound, like
know.
that is sound stuff right there.
All right, that's gone in the basket. Oh, it's got that picture of the troops on the bank. That picture with the troops on the bank of the by the bridge there. That seems to be doing the rounds of social media at the moment.
Really? Okay. Let's see if there's a bridge and yeah, but all those are dudes sitting on a riverbank.
Yeah.
Awesome. I always enjoy your reading recommendations on social media.
Yeah.
So can you tell people where they can find you, where they can watch for your stuff on social media?
Okay. Yeah, sure. At GRJ Books, Golf Romeo Juliet Books, or GeraintJonesMedia.com. But yeah, if you put GRJ Books in, then that should take you to. I don't really haven't used Twitter for a long time.
Okay.
Pretty much mostly Instagram. Sorry, GRJ Golf
Jay,
Romeo Juliet.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll go, bro. Yeah. I mean, I tried to get my own name on there, but to be honest, people can't usually spell my name either. So
Okay.
it would yeah.
How about that? Yeah,
Yes,
Jones.
sir. There we go. That's me.
Good. Yeah, if you follow G on there, there's a lot of good stuff. Great, a warrior poet in real life, so to speak. A lot of fun with cats in his stories, and yeah. So, man, thank you.
Come for the war, stay for the cats.
That's right. Any plans of coming back over to the old stateside anytime in the next year?
I got bent over a barrel by the tax man this summer, bro. So I was hoping to be seeing you in about 3 weeks, but I have a bill to pay.
Okay.
A bill has come due, and I don't have any tea to throw in the harbor, so I'm gonna have to just pay it and hopefully see you sometime later in the fall.
Okay. Well, you're always welcome here. I know it, Jesse.
Appreciate it, brother.
And, yeah. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
You're a fascinating dude, and I always enjoy spending time with you.
Thank you, sir. All the best to the family, mate. Thanks for having me on. And if you're listening to this, thanks for sticking it out. Hopefully talk to you on social media.